Thanks, Katie.
Here.
Did I? Oh, I didn't say aye, did I? I was busy. I'm here. Thank you, Katie. At the start of the meeting, I'd like to introduce Mayor Alan Hanks. He's going to give us a presentation on the history of 2012 and where we plan on going with this, and I'll turn it over to you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to share this PowerPoint. This is actually something that I've been sharing with some civic organizations, and also I gave this presentation to the department heads. And what it is, it's a history of how we basically evolved into our current 2012 program. And I think it's always important, as before we go into the next round of 2012, is to sort of stop, take a look back, and see how it started, what the original intent was, and some of the differences that it has made in our community, because it really has made a tremendous difference. Of course, the real name of 2012 is the Rapid City Economic and Civic Improvement Fund. That is the official name. Of course, see, there we go. It's also known as the 2012 Fund. Back in 1992, the City of Rapid City began a process, and they called it the Vision 2012. It was a program to actually look at long-term planning for the future of Rapid City. See if I can get my clicker to work there. There we go. Building on the progress since the 1972 flood, and that's really what started it all, was with the devastation of the 1972 flood. It really changed really the thought process of the community, and really, if you actually look at the layout of the community, because all of a sudden we had this huge greenway through the center of our community. The city extended the half-cent sales tax by vote of the citizens to provide a stable funding source to continue the progress and improvements in quality of life for all the citizens. Basically, what we did was, after the 1972 flood, and looking back, June 9th, I remember well. I was, quite honestly, I was 12 years old. I remember it like it was yesterday. But there again, heavy rains, massive flood in Rapid City. And if you actually look, this is actually right across the street from the Ford dealership, is where it is, down by our main fire station. More than $100 million worth of destroyed property. Now keep in mind, that's $100 million at its 1972 value. Can you imagine what that value would be today? And most importantly, 238 folks lost their lives in the 1972 flood. We're very fortunate we have the Greenway. The federal government, through FEMA, came in and helped us buy an awful lot of that floodway up, so we did not have any residential construction back in that floodway. But that's really the birth of 2012, was the result of the 1972 flood, because after the 72 flood, of course, what we did is we started looking for ways to improve Rapid City, and included there again the Greenway, which we turned into one of the most incredible park systems in the country. A lot of people don't realize that we have somewhere around 1,400 acres of Greenway in the center of town. We also have an additional 600 to 700 acres of additional park land, which is both M Hill and also up on Skyline Drive. So we have over 2,000 acres of parkland in Rapid City. And the Civic Center. Civic Center would have never happened without the 1972 flood. It was basically a residential neighborhood before the 1972 flood. Both Central High School and the Civic Center were actually built in old residential neighborhoods. The airport terminal was another project that was built as a result of this long-term vision. And keep in mind, these are all projects that were built prior to what we now call the Vision 2012, or the 2012 Fund program was officially adopted. The CSAC building, which we're currently in, was not a 2012 project. It was sort of the predecessor of that. In 1992, a long-term strategic plan for the next 20 years was developed. Communities looked to move Rapid City with a long-term vision, improve the quality of life in Rapid City, make Rapid City a more desirable place to live, and provide citizens basically provide for citizens and economic development. I will tell you, the folks that actually came up with the concept deserve an awful lot of credit. Ed McLaughlin was a mayor at the time. The person that also helped drive it was Dr. Schleusner, who, of course, was a previous president of the South Dakota School of Mines. Other folks that were involved, Babe Steinberg was actually on the council at the time. Kenny Meisner was on the council at the time. Karen Bowman was on there. I mentioned Larry Lytle. I mean, these folks, if you go back and look at the steps that they took to come up with this plan and what a difference it's made in our community has been just absolutely incredible. 2012 has probably been the biggest, has made the biggest difference in our community of anything we've ever done in our city's history. The question of money. So currently, now this was basically there again before the 2012 was adopted. A current half sales tax to pay off the debt incurred to build the Civic Center was about to be paid off. It was about to be paid off, and it was actually 1995, and it was actually a little bit sooner than that. Initiated measure to continue the tax for the civic improvements was taken to the people. In other words, the city council just didn't vote to implement the 2012. What they said was it had to have public support. In order to do that, we're going to go out and actually carry an initiated measure and ask the people to approve it. And that's exactly what they did. After many meetings between the community leaders and the people of Rapid City, the initiated measure passed on November 9th, 1993. It was referred not only once before it became effective, but also once after it was effective. So it's actually been referred twice by vote, and both times it passed with wide margins. Actually, the second time, I think, was almost a 70-30 vote. Matter of fact, the reason I know that was Ed McLaughlin at the time, back in must have been 94, asked me to carry information up in North Rapid. I went door to door telling people why it was a good thing that we could actually implement 2012 because it had been referred to by a vote. The original plan, phase one in 1995, from 1995 to 2000, there were 30 to 35 ideas that were originally proposed, 6 of which made the original 2012 program. Canyon Lake restoration, the museum, recreational enhancements, the recycling center, funds for economic development, and a visitor information center. And if you've noticed to this point, we have basically fulfilled each one of those original. Now, the recreational enhancements isn't exactly what they originally proposed, but we have the indoor aquatic center, we have the indoor ice, we have a lot of different things, Sioux Park, sports complex, all those things are the result of 2012. Just to recap, there again, Canyon Lake Park, before it was rebuilt, it wasn't anything compared to what it is today, $2.2 million. And that was a result of a couple things. Number one, the need to actually improve the water quality and also to make improvements within the park. Journey Museum, $10 million. The Sioux Park sports complex, there again, $3.4 million. The Sioux Park's tennis courts and the running track. Then we also had the parking across the field. This is right between post 22 and post 320. The recycling center. Matter of fact, I'm going to go back to the recycling center. Most people don't realize what an incredible facility we have with that recycling center. Rapid City has really been the example of how to do things right. A lot of times people don't realize that, but we have a world-class recycling center out the landfill. We have a lot of folks coming in all the time looking at what we've done to copy it. Matter of fact, we actually have, we've had some folks in within the last 6 months that are interested in coming in and trying to, in essence, build what we have in other parts, not only in the United States, but also around the world. The VIC. Now, we get into, in 2000, we started phase 2, and here's some of the projects, and I'm just going to go down the list real quick. YMCA, Catron Boulevard, Southwest Connector. That was actually a 2012 program. I remember when we cut the ribbon for that. As a matter of fact, Dennis Catron's daughter was the first one to ride on. She rode her Harley up Catron Boulevard. Storybook Island Gift Shop, Animal Shelter, Skateboard Park, Boys Club. I'm going to skip down a little bit. There again, Roosevelt Ice Park, the Boxing Club, the Public Library, the School of Mines track, ASA Girls Softball. I mean, all these projects were in phase 2. And just some of the things that came through there, again, the YMCA Museum, or the YMCA Gym, Catron Boulevard, $4.5 million. The gift shop, the Animal Shelter, Skateboard Park, the Boys Club Gym, Little League lighting at a number of places, the Meadowbrook Golf Course Clubhouse, Roosevelt Park Ice Arena, the Roosevelt Park Pool Complex, Youth Boxing, the Public Library. There again, we actually have 2 community centers, one at South and one at West Middle School. There again, what a great way to actually have a public-private partnership. We built them. We get to utilize them after school, weekends, and during the summer. And then the schools utilize them during the school day, and they pay for all the ongoing O&M costs. School Mines Track, the Highway 16 Fire Station, the ASA softball fields, Youth and Family Services, the Public Safety Building. Now we get into Phase 3, starting in 2005 through 2010. I got a little mark up there. Police Evidence Building, which is the PET building, the old Ziggs building. Skyline Drive Preservation, we purchased some land up there. It was almost $737,000, I believe. The Dolphin Arts, which is $3.2 million, which is now completed. The Civic Center expansion, that's the big one, the ice arena. The Burn Training Facility, downtown parking ramp, the third level we put on there. That was actually, wasn't part of the original Phase 3, but it was added to it. Stevens Gym, this is the multi-use, multi-purpose room. And just picture there again, there's a PET building that we use not only for the police evidence, but also for our transit. Skyline Drive Wilderness, $737,000. The Doll, 3.5. Actually, I think I'm going to have to correct that. It was 3.25. Kansas City Street, 1.3 million. Stevens Gym. The Burn Building. The third level of the parking ramp. The amount that actually, of money that actually came out of, and I think we're going to have to double check, I think it was $1.8 million. About $700,000 actually came out of 2012. The rest was actually bonded. The big one, the ice arena, $26 million for the new ice arena at the Civic Center. And it's sort of interesting because of the fact that just like the original Civic Center, there were folks in the community that had concerns about the cost and whether or not we really needed it. I was in Rapid City. I remember the discussions. I remember the debates where people thought it was absolutely ridiculous that we were looking at spending that much money on a Civic Center. And it was basically the same debate, waste of money, taxpayers shouldn't have to flip this bill, it was a white elephant, you name it. And now, the Civic Center, it really is a crown jewel of all of our facilities in Rapid City. And so, the ice arena just adds to that. And there again, what I tell people about the ice arena, what a wonderful success. There were some concerns, rightfully so. $26 million is a tremendous amount of money. But if you go over there during a hockey game, matter of fact, Carrie Underwood, of course, was announced that she's going to come play in Rapid City. She's going to be playing in the ice arena. And so it'll be the first major concert we have in that ice arena. And they specifically wanted the ice arena. So what a wonderful facility. Other projects not pictured that were in Phase 3, there's a number of Hospice House, the Homeless Coalition, the flashers, the traffic signals, safety netting, the dugout covers and so forth for the ASA girls softball, economic development, $2.5 million, greenway expansion, playground equipment. List keeps going on. Founders Park construction, which is, now these are projects that are actually happening now, they're still under construction. Founders Park, the concrete is laid, and that is going to be a depiction of the original township in Rapid City. This was actually a Leadership Rapid City project. The concrete is poured, and over the summer they'll actually coming in and actually doing the, I call it the engraving, but basically the sandblasting of the concrete to actually display the original township of Rapid City. Performing arts, of course, we have a letter of understanding between the school district and Rapid City and also the performing arts folks, $3.25 million. They gave us an update the other day. We're hoping to actually bring it from the council here shortly. Things seem to be moving along very well. Of course, the question I asked is, can you build it for the money you have? And they say yes. So hopefully in the next 30, 45 days, they'll actually have some renditions and can give the council an update. But it seems to be moving along just fine. The public-private partnership at 6th and St. Joe, of course, the Presidential Plaza, you just extended that for a couple months. I'm hopeful that they're going to continue to be able to get tenants in there. My understanding is they have it rented out about 70%, but because of the tight economy, the banks are asking for more. They in essence want the thing rented out before they break ground. I'll just so you know, I'll give the council an update as soon as I have a meeting on the 28th. The folks from Sioux Falls, along with the local representatives, are going to come in and give me an update, and I'll pass it along as soon as I have that. Projects happening soon, which are still part of Phase 3, are the Outlaw Power Grounds, of course, and the soccer complex. Now, as always, the council has a choice of how they want to proceed with the next round of 2012. And there's three different options we've always taken a look at. There's a pay-as-you-go option, which in this cycle, in Phase 4, would generate about $32.6 million. There is the 5-year bond, which is $30 million, and it seems interesting that if you bond for 5 years, it's actually less than what you would have available for the pay-as-you-go. But the problem is, in order to go out for the 5-year bond, you have interest, you have the cost of actually issuing the bonds and so forth, and there's actually less money available. Or there's the 7-year bonds, and that would generate $46.8 million. I've said this very publicly. I've had conversation with council members. My recommendation is we take a look at pay-as-you-go. During these tight economic times, I think we need to be very conservative. I just can't predict what the bond market is going to be like if we did go out for a bond. And the reason that I will recommend the pay-as-you-go process is during the Phase 3, of course, the ice arena went over budget. And so the council went out and they issued a second bond. And so we're still paying those bonds off. And if we do a pay-as-you-go for the 4th round, in 2015, 2012 will have no debt, 0 debt. And it will give us the opportunity to really take a long look at what we want to go into the Phase 5 of 2012. And the reason that's important is because if you go out and bond for 7 years like we've always had, instead of having $32 million available, you could have well over $60 million available in 2015 to actually go out and do major projects. So that's why I strongly recommend that we do a pay-as-you-go just to be fiscally conservative. Beyond 2012, continuing with the strategic plan for, I love this quote. I put it up here. Matter of fact, Katie found it for me. Thank you, Katie. Vision without action is merely a dream. Action without a vision just passes the time. But vision with action can change a world. And that's really what 2012 has done. It has changed Rapid City's world. And it is such an important part of our community. We need to make sure that as we look at going into the next phase, that we're good stewards of the citizens' money, because quite honestly, it's their money. And so I'm very happy that the council has tweaked its procedures to make sure that we have very good public input, that we have our citizens' boards, and that the recommendation will be coming back for the council for their final determination. With that, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mayor.
How to do it time.
I'll recognize Alderman Sam Quaker.
Just a couple of things. That was a very good presentation, and I was wondering if we could have that emailed out to the council, including to the 6 that are not here. So,
and what we'll do is we'll tweak a little bit, because there's a couple of things we need to fix in there. But what we'll do is be happy to send it out to you. You're certainly welcome to use it, and we'll also go ahead and post it on our website.
And then I just have several things. One is I think there are some lessons that we can learn from how 2012 has been done in the past and how we can do it in the future. One question I have, Mayor, is when would the new plan start? What year? Would it be 2011 to 2016?
Actually, 2010. The current plan is just about to expire. And so the City Council will be adopting the new plan yet this summer. I would assume it's probably going to be, by the time you get through the public hearings, it'll probably be July or August. I would imagine that most of the council members would feel it'd be important that any new council members, if elected, and of course we'll have at least 2, they have the opportunity to participate. So I imagine probably July or August.
So now the bonding, though, for this current bond runs until part of it runs until 2013 or 2014, right?
I believe it is 14.
But there's still some money that's still available.
All the money that was actually, the money that is identified, if the City Council chooses to continue to carry over the projects that have not been built in the Phase 3 2012, the money is actually all spoken for.
Okay.
Now, let me see if I can answer your question very specifically. You are correct. There were 2 bonds. The first bond, I believe, matures in 2012, and the other one in either 13 or the early part of 14, because that was also a 7-year bond, and that was bonded about a year after the original bond.
But the bonding for 2013 and 2014 still leaves significant dollars left over.
Yes.
Okay.
The number that you saw, the $32 million, that includes, that's actually basically taking the bond payments out of the cash flow. So that is the money that will be available for the next round.
And the interest rate assumption, it has been 4% over the previous year, which was adopted, I think, in 2006, if I remember right. What is the interest rate assumption for 2010? Has it been adjusted to 1% in accordance with CIP, or is it still at 4%?
Currently, it's still at 4%. That's a discussion the council will have when they go to adopt the next plan. That will be a decision the council will be making. There again, I think the CIP probably made a wise choice in actually taking it back to 1%. You're better erring on the conservative side than overestimating. So that will be a discussion I think the council can take up once they get together as a 2012 committee.
So currently, we're sitting at about negative 3.8, right?
Actually, the latest numbers we just got in the last day or so, we're showing 2.25. So the picture, and there again, please forgive me for repeating myself. I always say this. Try not to read in too much from month to month because it has a tendency to change. The direction seems to be heading in the right direction because we seem to be catching up with last year. But until we get about halfway through the year, I'm not going to try and make any predictions of whether or not we're going to basically get back to where we should be. But all I can tell you is the trend seems to be going in the right direction.
Good. So we would then be, I know that's a big assumption and it's only April, but we'd be at negative 6.25. So it'd be 2.25 plus the 4% assumption. So we would basically be down 6.25. So knowing where things look at for where we're at for 2010, would it be wise to take a look at that 4% assumption for 2010 and plug in a 1% number or even a minus 2.25% number and make sure that we're not going to run into the red for 2010? I don't think we would because we haven't spent the soccer dollars and some other big expenditures, but you know where I'm going with that.
I know exactly, Sam, I know exactly where you're going. Matter of fact, I'm going to check because having said, and maybe, and I think I misinterpreted what you said, Sam, when you asked about what revenue projections we were using, I was assuming we were talking about Phase 3. The revenue projections going into Phase 4, which came from the finance office, and I'll look at Jim, and I don't know if he's going to know this off the top of his head. Did Pauline use a 1% increase as far as revenue for 2012 for the next round of going into Phase 4? Did she use 4%? Okay, very good. So in other words, she basically followed the lead of the rest of the CIP. Okay, very good.
1% started then which year? 2010?
We'll start in 2010, yes.
That's good news. Okay, and then just two other things, and I'm as you know, Mayor, you and I both had, and others had concerns too, not on the Civic Center project, but on the methodology used, meaning we broke ground on, or the city broke ground on Phase 1 without having the bids back for Phase 2. So I think there was a tremendous amount of criticism on that, but I think the criticism on the project itself was actually very, very small. So it was more of a methodology. And the other issue that I think has come out of this is you look at the Roosevelt swimming pool, which I will go on record as saying I very much enjoy going there, and my girls enjoy it even more than I do. It was a very nice project, also very expensive, and the operation and maintenance costs were not factored in when it was built. And so when I got on the council in 2002, the decision had been made to build that, and then subsequent councils were surprised by a $400,000 a year annual subsidy, which I think is probably a little bit higher now. But again, beautiful projects. It just underscores the need for our committees to identify the operation and maintenance costs, because one of the things, and I'll close by saying this, is 2012 in and of itself it's only a special fund because we in Rapid City have made it special by taking the second penny that most every city in the state is allowed to have and splitting it into two pieces, one part called 2012 and the other part called CIP. And if we don't spend it properly, it creates strain on both the CIP fund and also the general budget fund. I think, quite frankly, we should use even more of this upcoming round on infrastructure. And we should also go ahead and just remove the 2012 name and just call it the Vision Fund or something like that, because we're coming up on 2012. But thank you for the presentation, and I think we're on the right track. But the revenue flow does concern me a little bit, but it sounds like everyone's aware of that. And if we could just get an updated spreadsheet sent out to the council as well, that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you. That's all I have.
I just wanted to clarify. He said he had 2 more questions. So what were the questions? No more. Oh, 2 more. Okay. That's all I wanted to know. Mayor, did you want to respond?
I do, and Alderman Quaker, and I think we were actually on the council, I got to think about this. It would have been 2000. One of the things, of course, that we did just prior to the adoption of the current plan, and that would have been 2003, I actually was fortunate enough to actually chair the 2012 revision task force, and of course that's where we came up with the percentages. Before, there was in the first 2 rounds there was no division of how that money was spent, and of course currently the ordinance actually reads that 50% will be on infrastructure, 25% on civic improvements, 25% for economic development. And I think that was wise to do, because Alderman Quaker is exactly right in the fact that I can tell you, all other communities in the state of South Dakota use their entire second penny for infrastructure. We split ours in half of it's for infrastructure, half of it is 2012. Now keep in mind, and I remind people of this all the time, the original intention of 2012 was to build projects that we could not otherwise afford, infrastructure projects. And so we have to be very careful when we start looking at projects, especially those that have an ongoing O&M cost. And if you actually look at the requirements of when you actually submit a 2012 application now, it requires that you can demonstrate that you can actually pay for the O&M, whether it's internally within the city, you have to have a funding source, or if it is a project that is for say for an outside agency, they have to demonstrate that there's not going to be any ongoing expenses, because this fund is, in essence, to build. It does 2 things. It builds things, and it creates jobs through the economic development. And so we have to be very careful when we look at all these different projects that are being proposed, is there any additional expense down the road? Because it's easy to build. We always talk about it. It's easy to build a building. What's expensive is to continually maintain and pay the expenses of that over a 20-year life. The other comment I had was Alderman Quaker brought up the idea of trying to drop the 2012. It's interesting because a lot of folks in our community seem to think that this plan actually ends in the year 2012. And there again, that's why every opportunity I have is I try to go out there and actually remind people what the real name is, Rapid Civic Improvement Economic Development Fund. That's really the real name, and maybe the thing we should do is, as this go around, instead of calling it Vision 2012, we just call it the Vision Fund. I think that's probably a good idea. But thank you so much. I'll stand by for any additional questions.
I'd like to give council an opportunity to speak before I make any comments. Does anybody else have?
Yeah, I just have a question.
I'll recognize Alderwoman Patty Martinson.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming there's sort of pre-selection of the applications, filter out, or how that the applications.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the question, Patty. The process is there are, of course, going to be 3 different committees.
Mm-hmm.
So one will be for infrastructure, one for civic improvement, for economic development. What we will do is when those applications were submitted, they were asked to identify which one of the funding sources they were looking at. And unfortunately, some of the folks checked all 3. The process is we will forward those applications to any committee that they checked. In hindsight, we probably should have been more specific and said you can only apply for 1. But, that's fine. They applied for 3. And so whatever committee you're on, if he checked, a good example was there's one project that checked all 3 of those committees will actually see those applications. There's no filtering from our side. What we want to do is we just want to present all the raw data. If you're interested, I think I've mentioned this before, the entire applications are all actually online on our website, and you can actually check on 2012, drop you down, and the files were so big that we had to do individual links, but you can look at each one of the applications online with all the documentation. So from that point, there again, my understanding of the process that the council has adopted to this point is the fact that the committees will meet. Matter of fact, you approved the committee list the other day, Monday night, and they will actually hold their public hearings. I would assume that whoever chairs those committees will be in communication with each other, because there will most likely be some overlap in requests, like there always is. And then they come back with their recommendations. They'll come to the full council. The full council, and this is one thing I always remind the public, is the fact that it's very important we get public input, but the final determination lies with the council. It always has under state statute. And so the council will make the final determination what projects move forward. And there again, I would envision that the council would probably take that up sometime in July, at the latest in August. I just don't see it happening before July, just because of the fact that we're getting close enough to the election. I would think that the council would want the new council members that come on board to have the opportunity to participate.
If a particular project does qualify for Vision 2012 funding?
Well, actually, I think that's going to be the work of the committees. Anything that was submitted will be forwarded. I mean, there's a couple that I will tell you may not qualify for 2012. But we're going to let that determination happen at the committee level.
Okay.
We want to make sure that there is full opportunity for the committee to see all the applications that were brought in. And then if there's any question, of course, what my suggestion would be is ask whoever the chairman of that committee is. And if you need to get legal advice, go to Jason Green and ask him if it truly qualifies per the definition in the ordinance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. I want to make a few comments. First, that vision statement, I love it because I got that hanging on my wall. It's not quite like that in my office, but it makes the point. I mean, the positive difference, and I think we are moving forward. To answer some of the questions of what's moving on with the 2012, me and Malcolm are meeting tomorrow to kind of go over that. We do have a meeting Friday with as many of the members of the committees that are going to be there to give like a first ever training session on 2012. And we'll probably end up showing some of what the mayor just showed, because this is outstanding. I think we're going to have copies in everybody's drawers of your presentation today.
You can, and you say that's tomorrow, isn't it? Or is it Friday?
Well, me and Malcolm are meeting tomorrow.
Oh.
But Friday we have the training session for the committee members, and we want to kind of go over how the process works and so forth.
If you would like, I believe that I'm in the office all day Friday. I'd be more than happy to come in and give a quick version of this PowerPoint to all the members of the committees.
Okay. And I think we're off to a great start. You know, we split it down, made the committees a little bit smaller. We put council members on each one, so when it comes time to the decision process, council members have had the input from being on the committees. One of the other things that I think we're going to end up doing is when we set the time and dates for these meetings, we're going to send out notice to all people running for city council to get that information to them so they can be there and get updated on that information, which I think is very, very much needed. I wanted to thank Mayor Alan Hanks for his presentation, because this is very informative. If there's some way you can have this linked to the website also. I think the history of 2012, we need to get that back out there. And, you know, as hard work as Ed McGoughlin worked on this and everybody else back then, you know, they really deserve the credit, you know.
One last thing in closing, and that is the fact that one of the things, Patty, I think that the committees are going to have to make the determination of, and that is whether they want to do the pay-as-you-go 5-year or the 7-year bond. That can be right up front, that can be towards the back after hearing all the different presentations. But in order to have an idea how much each one of those committees has available funding, that determination needs to be made fairly quickly. There again, my recommendation is to do a pay-as-you-go. It's the most conservative. I've talked with a number of council, and I think that's the way most people are leaning. But that is a decision for the council to make.
Mayor, I was going to, had a mindset to ask that question today, and you had it in your presentation, and I very much appreciate that, because I think the council's going to need as much information on that beforehand as we go forward, so they can make a good educated decision on that. And it's looking positive. I think it's the way to go myself, but I think if we can get as much information as we can, it'd be nice to get it out to the council so they can consider it.
Very good. Thank you.
Do we have any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, look for a motion to adjourn. It's been moved, seconded to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, guys.